So here the oxygen bottle fracture. This is done by Discovery Health, a TV show that we did about it, and then dislocated out the back. It broke the head of the humerus, dislocated the shoulder. The graphics have taken the lower legs out.
The powerful winds then bent his right leg around the right side of the ejection seat, tearing the ligament on the inside of his knee. His left leg was also whipped to the right, smashing into the side of the seat, breaking both his lower leg bones in 5 places. His left leg was then bent up over the right side of the seat, tearing the ligament on the outside of the knee.
It looks like one of those cool freestyle kids that the kids do now on the skateboard and stuff. When that lower left leg went to the right, it hit that leg brace that I was pointing out. That did cause it to fracture in 5 spots. That was a compound fracture. And then my foot turned around backwards. Anybody know why my foot turned around backwards? Wind resistance. Speed is life, baby. I'm going faster now. So let's recap. Where are we? We're 8,000 feet above the Gulf of Mexico. We've got a broken arm in 3 spots, a dislocated shoulder, a broken head of the humerus in the shoulder, 2 severely dislocated knees, and a compound fracture in my left leg. My helmet's blown off, and my face is now... Who's got a pickup truck and a dog? Okay, 60 mile an hour, 600 mile an hour. My face is swollen up to twice its normal size. My eyes are swollen shut. And I go into the Gulf of Mexico in that condition, blind and confused. But, remember, you pull them, you're dead. If it works, you're alive. I'm alive. We're good to go. Unfortunately for Spitter, Spitter is too far behind me. He never sees me leave the jet. Flight leads here who've been to combat or who've ever lost a wingman, you know what he was going through. Okay? He spends a few minutes hyperventilating at about 10,000 feet, turning left circles, when he hears a beacon. And it takes him a little bit of time after gang loading the regulator, getting 100% oxygen and emergency flow to get his wits about him. And he goes, wait a minute, the beacon only works if the seat is out of the jet. But that's not the first thing that comes to his mind. His first thing that comes to his mind is, excuse me kids, that's a damn fine beacon to be working underwater. And as he recollects himself, he goes, wait a minute, the seat must be out. And he starts circling down lower, and he can see where the jet impacted. There's a decent oil slick there. And he marks it, and he starts flying around. And of course, he's now gotten the rescue forces all coming. Eventually, he will find me floating down under canopy. And of course, he's now happy. He at least knows I've gotten out of the jet. Unfortunately, I'm never able to pop smoke. I'm never able to get on the radios. I'm never able to use my CDI markers or any of our survival stuff. My raft does successfully inflate. It's tethered to me on a tether, goes into the water. Remember, I'm busted up. When I go into the water, I can't reach up and release my parachute from me. I cannot inflate my life preserver unit. Statistically, my life preserver unit has probably been shredded due to the wind, due to the speeds. That day, thank you Lord, mine had not. We have a device called SeaWar, saltwater activated releases. It's basically a 12-gauge shotgun cartridge on each of my parachute releases, and there's one in my life preserver. When it senses salt water for 2 seconds, it explodes, releases my canopy off of me, keeping me from being drugged or drawn down, and it inflates my LPU, which was intact, and I will float with a Mae West blinded in the Gulf of Mexico for the next time until things show up. The first thing that shows up is a Huey helicopter out of Eglin Air Force Base. It was there to support the drones. It has a hoist. It has 2 pilots, no rescue swimmers, but they hover over the top of me, and I wave at them with my right arm. I can't swim to the helicopter because when you swim with one arm, but they know at the half-hour point that I'm at least alive. About this time, Spitter's run out of gas, and at least he has headed home knowing that I'm alive in the water and feeling a little bit better. Every rescue C-130s, MH-53s, Coast Guard jets, Coast Guard helicopters, additional F-15s, a Coast Guard buoy tender, they are all headed our way. Okay? Here's what the saltwater activated releases look like. This is a ACES II straight out of an F-15. You can see it's a little more of the upright configuration. So there's where the lower left leg fractured. What's really cool is about a year after this, I was asked to give the graduation speech at the Survival School Instructor course over at Fairchild Air Force Base. I have a room of about 200 wives, brothers, parents, husbands of young men and women who have spent basically the last 6 months surviving around the world and learning to be survival instructors. The Chief Master Sergeant of the school, the highest ranking enlisted NCO of the school, his name was Chief House. He was on the initial team that developed the Sea Wars. It's real humbling to stand in front of people, tell them how important the job that their loved ones is doing, when one of them designed the device that saved your life. The MH-53 that eventually plucked me out of the water was out doing a functional check flight from maintenance. They were recalled to the airport and said, do a hot pit refueling, we've got a guy in the water. The PJs are the pararescue troops, so they're basically a paramedic who shoots and runs and swims and skydives really well. There was 2 of them that were at the squadron. One was getting ready to deploy downrange. One of them was getting ready to have his first baby, so he wasn't deployed. They answered the phone, they grabbed their gear bags, and back then at Hurlburt Air Force Base, the PJs were on one side of the field and the helicopters on the other side. The PJs figured they didn't have time to go drive around to the other side, and they figured they were tougher than the Sky Cops who might try to stop them from running across the runway, so they grabbed their 70-pound backpacks, put them on their back, and sprinted across the runway, jumped in the helicopter. Unhooked the fuel hoses, and they took off. They got over the top of me. The Pavlo is a great special ops helicopter, but at 4,500 horsepower from its 3 engines and basically about a 100-foot rotor blast, it's not a very good rescue chopper. It's kind of like taking a hurricane and putting it on top of the hurt guy. So what happens is that the Pavlo comes in over the top of me, and the PJ's there with all his gear, and they come into a low hover about 30 feet over the top of me, and he jumps. And he goes into the water right beside me. But remember that life raft that's tied to me on a 25-foot hover? It's now like an umbrella. When we're in survival school and a helicopter shows up to rescue you, the first thing you do is you deflate your life raft. If you have some confidence in the helicopter crew, you poke it with a knife, otherwise you open the valves. Mine doesn't get deflated, so just as he jumps, my life raft gets sucked up in the rotor wash, just misses the tail rotor, and when he pops up, he goes, and the door gunner's like, start swimming, he's that way. I'm about 150 feet out the back of where I just was, getting drugged by this with these injuries. That's okay, I'm alive. This footage was taken by the Coast Guard, one of their rescue choppers that was now on scene as well. So thank you for the Coasties for taking this. This was before, hey, come on. I am actually a black dot out here that...
It took several hours to locate John's torn, crushed body 25 miles offshore. Then pull the helpless pilot to safety.
Notice how high this helicopter is in that picture right there. When it comes time to hoist me again, the PJ's gone in the water. He spends about a half hour putting me onto a backboard, taking C-spine precautions. When they start to hoist me, I'm at the 2.5 hour mark. The PJ went in the water with me 2 hours after I went in the water by myself. I complained to him that I could not see and that my leg was banged up. He just told you, don't worry, your eyes are swollen and your leg's a little banged up. Because I complained it hurt. So if the PJ's talking, he's lying. But I still buy him all the Jack Daniels he wants. You notice how long this little black dot is. That's me in the stretcher. And the PJ is sitting on top of me like the old Rescue 911 shows. Unfortunately, at this point, it has turned into a bear hug. Because when they started to hoist me, the basket had been hooked up incorrectly. And instead of staying in the vertical or in the horizontal position, it shifted vertically. It shifted vertically at about the 30-foot mark. And this PJ told me I knew we were going back into the water. He didn't know what had gone wrong, but he was sure we were falling back in the water. That is about a 120-foot hover. If we had fallen from 120 feet with him bear hugging me, he was dying and I was living. And he was ready for that. God bless these guys. But they get me successfully hoisted all the way up into the helicopter. I talked to the helicopter pilots a couple months later when I had who's now my wife, who was then my girlfriend, had moved to Mississippi to take care of me, carrying all the whiskey back to the helicopter crew, and they go, well, it's our first real rescue, but more importantly, it was kind of boring. It was daytime, good weather. Realize these were special ops guys. Nobody shot at us. My helicopter was brand new, just out of the wash rack, and you were bleeding on it, so I wasn't too happy. But this PJ, remember, he's home because he's about to have a baby. I was his first real-life rescue. 3 hours later, he delivered the most beautiful daughter. Wonderful young woman. He looks at his wife and goes, this was the best day of my career. Getting married was kind of the second. But it was a special day for him. They medevaced me back to Eglin Air Force Base, rolled me in. I was conscious. I recognized my best friend's voice. He grew up in Chehalis. We went to school at Central together, went to pilot training together. We were at Tyndall together. He had heard it was me. He met me at Eglin Air Force Base. I said, Sid, what happened? And he told me. I went, okay. 20 seconds later, Sid, what happened? Anybody who's ever had a traumatic brain injury or concussion, my short-term memory didn't exist. My long-term memory did, though, because I gave him my credit card phone number. Remember we used to have those AT&T cards? I rattled that off to him. I rattled off Mary Ann, my girlfriend, who's now my wife's phone number. Call her, and here's my parents' number. Call them. They basically did a quick evaluation, stabilized me, put me on a C-130, and medevaced me to Keesler Air Force Base, Biloxi, Mississippi, which was a regional medical center, where I went into a 9-hour surgery. They put a plate in my left forearm. They relocated my shoulder. They relocated both of my knees, put an external fixator, which we'll look at some pictures of, which is basically a series of rods and screws holding my right leg together, because it was too injured to be able to put into a cast, even though it was fractured due to the swelling. And they put the left leg just into an external brace just to keep it straight for a while. All right, that's not blood, don't worry, that's mainly betadine. So what we have is we have 2 hexagonal rods, we have 13 different screws which just go into the bones above and below the fracture site, obviously being right here. And it was kind of handy because there was no itching like a cast. When you wanted to move your leg, you just grabbed the external fixator, kind of like a lunch pail hand, and moved it around. It worked out really well. Don't worry, that's it. There's no blood. Here's the fracture site. The fracture site was, the compound open section was large enough that we took a skin graft to close it up. So we took the skin off the left side of my thigh right here and then stapled it onto the opening. And that's what that looks like there, and it really just about looks like that today. The fracture site right there, dimensionally, was about this big, about 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch triangle. And those bones were in 5 main fragments, and what they did is they just pushed them to the outside of my shin, and the doctor left them there, and he says, they're going to reabsorb into your body. We're 20 years out, they're still reabsorbing, but it used to literally stick up 1 inch. I had a big old inch blob right here. And now it's about this big. And so the body is slowly taking that bone structure and putting it back in. We spent about 3 months in Keesler Air Force Base. We could not get this broken leg to heal. Oh, by the way, anybody spend any time in Biloxi, Mississippi in the summer? I'm sorry. When you're a Pacific Northwest boy, all your family's up here, and you were down there, the doctor that I had was a battlefield surgeon. He's like a single-seat fighter pilot. He's got the right idea when there's no time to talk about it. But we're in a hospital now and there's time to talk about it, and unfortunately he wasn't the kind of doctor that wanted to talk. Didn't go over well. His idea was to put me in a empty hotel room, hospital room on the 5th floor, and I was going to be an inpatient, outpatient until they got me fixed, which was probably going to be a couple years. I said, that's not going to work. I got myself transferred back home to Moses Lake and eventually to Fairchild Air Force Base, where I could be around family and friends. When I got to Fairchild Air Force Base, the first time I walked into the orthopedic clinic, the tech sergeant who had been in my 9-hour surgery in Biloxi, Mississippi, was the tech sergeant in charge of the orthopedic clinic up here. It was nice to see a friendly face. But we couldn't get that broken leg to heal, so we eventually did a bone graft. We took bone out of my right hip, we ground it up into a glue. This was in January, so almost 8 months later, and we glued that entire portion of my lower leg together. You can see this fracture and this fracture had healed up nicely, but the larger bone there in the lower leg did not. Now it's healed up and it'll never break. The next thing was we got to figure out how to get my knees fixed so I could actually walk again. I had a blank check. I could have gone anywhere in the world, and my orthopedic surgeon in Spokane, when he met me, he had no idea I was walking in the door. I walk in with 20 pounds of x-rays, with 3 bad limbs, a tech sergeant giving me bear hugs, and he's like, what's with you? And I go, well, I got a bad ACL, PCL, MCL, ACL, PCL, LCL, and I just need them fixed. His first words was, I can't fix you. I went, perfect, you're hired. Because that last doctor I'd had didn't know his limitations. He came up with a game plan that was really bad. But this doctor goes, I know my limitations and I can't do it. I said, well, who would you go to? And he sent me to the Air Force Academy to Dr. Mark Miller. He was the chief orthopedic surgeon at the football team. All right? We still keep in touch, and he took me down after my wedding. Oh yeah, we give these doctors lots of challenges. I told him we got to get this broken leg healed because in May, I ejected. In April, I'm getting married, and I'm going to walk down the aisle without crutches or braces. Challenge on, doctor. Let's go. Turn in, fights on. About 2 weeks before my wedding, he very impatiently pushed on me to start walking. I had broke every doctor's rule, had been doing. I'd been haying, I'd been rock climbing with crutches and braces, doing everything. But the first time he wanted me to actually step on that leg with no cast, no braces, no external fixators, it scared me. And after 5 minutes, literally, he pushed me. Walked down the aisle up in Shoreline here with my wife, and we had a wonderful wedding. So after our honeymoon, we went to Colorado Springs, Colorado, and the doctor started reconstructing my knees. We did the first knee in May. We went back in August for a checkup. He goes, everything's looking good. Let's schedule your second knee surgery. He pulls out his wallet. He grabs the football schedule. He goes, oh, Notre Dame game. This one will be good. We'll catch you on Friday. We'll take you to the football game Saturday morning. Now I'm thinking he's joking. October rolls around, I go into 6 hours of surgery, they put all 3 ligaments back together. The next morning at 7 in the morning, the ambulance crew shows up. Ready to go to the game? The doc's like, what's going to go wrong? You're going to hurt your leg, going to break up your knee? Your doctor's standing right beside you. I pushed the morphine drip, put it back together. But I loved his attitude, his great attitude. The knees still have pretty much all this retained hardware with a whole lot less cartilage, a lot of arthritis. Anybody knows a good knee replacement surgeon? I'm shopping for one right now, so let me know. Throughout all this, a couple things that I learned that I can pass on to anybody, no matter what you do. There was times that I woke up in the hospital and the first thing I said was, put me back in a jet, I'm going to go fly again. And then there was days I went, you know, maybe flying a C-130 wouldn't be so bad. And then my wife would kick me and I'd go, okay, no, you're right, back to the Eagle. There was a 5-year-old boy in the hospital with me. He had terminal cancer. I never saw that kid frown. He was always happy. I don't care who you are. I don't care what challenges you have. I don't care what you're dealing with. There is somebody within 5 minutes of you that has it a lot worse off. And the thing is, you may not be able to look at them and tell it. And they're probably not going to tell you. And no matter what you're challenging, whether your biggest challenge is the fact that you're a 16-year-old girl who didn't get asked out to homecoming, or you're an older gentleman who's starting to maybe risk losing his flight physical capability, or things aren't going the way you want at work or at home, I surrounded myself by people who were willing to support me. That included doctors, physical therapists, friends, and families. And it was not always the people who I thought would be there for me. Why? Some people can't stand being in a hospital. I don't mind being in a hospital as a patient. I'm not going to go visit you in the hospital, though. Okay? There is always somebody out there. The biggest thing is let people know if you need help. Okay? For me, my goal was to let the doctors fix me so I could water ski, snow ski, hike, bike, and carry on the active lifestyle I always had. If I could do those events and activities, then getting in the jet would be no problem. The hardest thing flying the Eagle is climbing the 10-foot ladder to get into it. Okay?
I used to think I had my whole life planned out. I knew what I was going to do for the whole rest of my life. And then one day, I was taught that you can't predict and you can't plan anything because it can be totally changed in a heartbeat. Right now, I'm enjoying looking forward to a Monday and going to work.
That was taken during a Dateline episode that we filmed up in Elmendorf, Alaska. I was able to get back in the jet, to fly the F-15, thankfully. 3 years, 1 month, 4 days, and 6 hours after I left it. Had an operational tour in Alaska. Went and taught 3 years with the Navy at Pensacola at VT4. Went back to fly Operational Eagles at Mountain Home, Alaska, off to Korea as the Director of Safety for 7th Air Force, and then spent my last 5 years teaching T-38s at Laughlin Air Force Base. This event changed my life, okay? I didn't ask for it. It wasn't my choice. It was the cards the Lord dealt to me. I firmly believe that He only challenges you in the ways that you can succeed and handle. I wouldn't change it if I could go back and ask Him to undo it, because it has given me the privilege of sharing the story with people. And as you see, it's not many fighter pilots will stand up here and cry on national TV or in front of friends. It touched me. But it's been a real honor to be able to share it, because I know it has had a positive influence on other people around the world. I've received letters and emails from literally people around the world going, your story has helped us. Your story has given me hope or given me faith to be able to overcome something. And like I say, it doesn't matter how big or small. What's big for me may be real minor for you. Physical pain doesn't bother me at all. I can stand right here and take a pin and stick in my forearm. It doesn't bother me. You give me dull, achy pain from my knees right now, and I'll turn in the biggest grump in the world. You get me out of my control, where it's now just the doctors writing medical waivers for 9 months on me. Worst thing in the world. Single-seat fighter pilot, not in control. Great thing is, my wife will never ask me to quit flying, ever. She's lived through that 2-year hell. It'll never happen again.